Morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Kevin. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice sunny day. Um, enjoying that. The Queen's speech this week and announcements that the Her Majesty's government's going to be making changes to UK data protection legislation, so that will keep us and our clients busy. Um,
Yes,
Today we're here to talk about ISO 27001. So thank you for that. Really just wanted to get a view on why ISO 27001 is important for you and all businesses, and get a view on some of the changes that are coming into effect, if that's okay.
of course, no problem.
Okay. Firstly, so why is ISO 27001 so important to you personally, Chris, and your department?
So, the role I play within Cyberfort is the Data Protection and Compliance Director. So, as a lead within the compliance department, what's important to me is the information that we hold and what flows through our departments and how our staff and contractors interact with that information. And over the last couple of years, what we've seen is that has vastly changed. Um, there's been a number of factors to that. Obviously, the increase in SaaS-based solutions, public and private cloud, etc. But obviously, the pandemic, all our workforces had to work remote, so that presented a set of challenges, certainly in terms of compliance. How can we ensure our employees and contractors can collaborate and share information? And that's where ISO 27001 really does shine as an information security management standard, because it gets you to think about the information that you hold. So from my perspective, I firstly look at data protection. Okay, so we're bound, if any organization stores, processes or transmits EU citizens data, you're bound by GDPR. And obviously in the UK it's Data Protection Act 2018. So what that actually means is our staff and our customers, we need to look at any PII information we have within the organization, how we categorize that, how we store that, and how we control that information and access to that information in accordance with lawfulness of processing. Secondly is the business information that we hold. So if you think about our customers' information, we do work with some public sector customers, and if you look at that, they have a great classification scheme, which is from official to top secret. Well, we know if top secret information was compromised, that could be a risk to national security. Obviously, we have customers that have products and services that need to be online 24/7. So if those services became unavailable, that creates a problem to their business as well. So ISO 27001, through its approach and its methodology, gets to you to look at the systems that you're using, how you're storing, processing, transmitting information, the role that you play within that data. So are you the controller, processor, joint controller, etc.? And what are your obligations from a legal, statutory, and regulatory point of view? Once you understand this data, the information that you have in the business, it's easy then for me to be able to apply sensible controls around that in terms of access, business continuity, and any incident management, etc. So I've found 27001 to really help with that, particularly with all the changes and that we've seen around data in the last few years.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So some significant changes then. So, but I guess specifically for your team, Chris, what's going to be the biggest change?
Well, so internally, what we've been doing is looking at the information we have on ISO 27001. So it's worthy of note that the standard isn't released yet. We're looking at a Q2 release, but if you look at the standard, it's essentially in two parts. So the first part is the Annex L, which is classed as the Annex L, and this doesn't change from ISO standard to ISO standard. So they've got lots of standards out there for information security, quality, environmental. And typically you get audited on clause 4 to 10, so the context of the organization, leadership, and continual improvement. Now they won't change. What does change within those, within the Annex L, is the sub requirements. So for example, if you're rolling out an environmental management system, you would need an aspects and impacts register. You won't necessarily need that within an information security management system, but what you would need is a more of a risk-based approach, certainly clause 8, where we talk about operations. What we have seen is, and have access to, is ISO 27002, which is the security controls. Now, this makes up the second part of ISO 27001, which is the Annex A. Okay. Now, this is changing very significantly. It's almost a complete rewrite of the standard itself. So what we've seen is currently we have 14 control categories. They are going to be reduced down to 4 control clauses or themes. And they are going to be split between organizational controls, people controls, physical controls, and technological controls. Within those those themes, you're going to have now 93 controls. So we've taken from 114 to 93, and that further breaks down to, I think it's 59 that are being updated, 24 merged from the old standard, and 11 new controls, which will be around threat intelligence, configuration management, data leakage prevention, secure coding, that sort of thing. So although it sounds like they've reduced these controls, it would be a bit like what we saw in the Data Protection Act. So we had Data Protection Act 1998, which had 8 principles, and then we have GDPR, or Data Protection Act 2018, which has 6 principles. However, those 6 principles were enhanced, still incorporated the old principles, and added things like technical organizational measures to protect the confidentiality and integrity of information. So we're seeing that within 27002. It's worthy of note that 27002 is changed from a code of practice, and it's more of a broad set of guidelines for information security. So this should set the benchmark and give us longevity with this sort of standard as well. I've also noticed within the standard, they've introduced within clause 4, they've introduced new terminology. So which is good to see. They class these as attributes. So you're going to have your control, but within that control you have this attribute table now, and they've aligned that more to NIST and information security best practices. So what we see there is you have your control, and then you're going to have control type, which would be preventive, detective, or corrective. You'll then have information security properties. Now, this is something we're more used to within ISO 27001. We class it as the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We have the concepts. This is very much aligned with NIST, so the identify, protect, all the way down to recover. Then you got operational capabilities. So what is that? Is that asset management, human resources, etc. And then finally, security domains, governance and ecosystems, defense and detect. So you can see there's some significant changes within the standards. So for me at the moment, it's looking at and going back over what we have within the Cyberfort group and applying the controls where we see necessary.
Okay, thank you. Would you encourage businesses to become ISO 27001 certified? And if so, why?
Yes, indeed. So for me, I do a lot of work with suppliers and our supply chain. So one of the things I'm looking out for when I assess a supplier is how are they handling information? Because information security is very, very important. So if I'm working with a supplier that has PII information, I'm challenging them in terms of, well, how are you protecting that? It's and you need to do this because Article 28 of GDPR or Data Protection Act states that if you're the controller and you're working with a processor, you have to provide sufficient guarantees, and that's not easy to do within GDPR because certifications, etc. Although they're talked about, you know, they're not essentially. No standard out there says you comply with GDPR, but ISO 27001 has really become the de facto standard. So for me, when I'm asking a supplier, how do you handle information security? Do you have ISO 27001? That's easier for me to do my due diligence as opposed to a supplier saying, no, we don't have any information security, because then it's not a showstopper, but I have to do more due diligence within that organization. For me, with working in a compliance department as well, 27001 really does help us work across the board within various departments in a standardized way. That's because, you know, it has the W. Edward Deming cycle, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. So you're constantly evaluating your data and what you have throughout the life cycle of that data. So for us, already we know if there's an incident or a breach, we know how to handle an incident of breach. Things around business continuity, if our services became available, again, we know how to react in certain situations. So for customers, really, if you're looking at a sensible information management system, ISO 27001 really does work for us.
So Chris, thank you for that. What do you think are the biggest challenges you and other businesses are going to face?
Well, I think one of the major challenges is going to be around cost and complexity of applying these controls. It's a good opportunity. Obviously, currently, ISO 27001 2015 is the standard that we're currently under. So it's been over 7 years that we've been with that standard. So our policy and processes we would have added to, and they would have got a bit bloated now. So it's a good opportunity for us to readdress our policy, processes and procedures internally, and how we meet the controls. Um, one thing around cost and complexity is how do we achieve some of these controls? For example, there's a control around threat intelligence, which says we need to identify and respond to threats within our networks or our environments. Already at Cyberfort, we're pretty much ahead of the game there in terms of we've created several services because we work with customers such as PCI DSS, those that still process transmit cardholder data. So we created a service called MDR, which enables us to detect any threats to our environments or our customers' environments, and through our security operations center, we are able to respond in the right ways. But that is one thing a lot of customers are going to have to start thinking about, typically around threat intelligence. How do you ensure you meet that control whilst ensuring you're not having to introduce too much complexity or too much cost within your business. And there are challenges around data leakage prevention, etc., and the techniques and technologies that we're going to need to introduce to satisfy those kind of controls.
That's great, thank you. Well, Chris, that's all the questions from me. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much.